When you think of Greenland, the word Greenland, you probably think of an extremely green place. And when you think of Iceland, you probably think of somewhere that's covered in ice. So, if you couldn't see these logos, which one would you imagine be Iceland? Obviously this big one. And which one would you imagine be Greenland? This one. But that's not true. For some reason, this is Greenland and this is Iceland. Why? Well, that's what I'm going to explain in today's video. These names obviously should be switched. We'll start with Iceland. A traveler who had recently stayed at the Faroe Islands, which is also owned by Denmark, arrived on the western part of Iceland, which would usually be areas that would be modern day Reykjavik and Borgarns. That's what they would be modern day. Now, this is the weirdest explanation. He climbed on top of one of these mountains, which I would imagine be this one because it was in the center, which that mountain is in the center of Iceland. If I leave my mouse on it and go up, it's in the center. Then he saw a floating ice shard out in the ocean. He decided to name the place Iceland. Now, the story of how Greenland got its name is completely different. But it still originates from Iceland. In around 958 years, like year 958, a traveler who they called I already forget his name. I need to look it up. Don't read any of this. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can answer the story. Okay, so from Iceland, a explorer also, I'm not sure if he was from the Faroe Islands like the other one was, but his name was Eric the Red. He fought a war in Iceland, but was exiled. Now, it's unknown if he got a boat and him and his Norse soldiers swam to Greenland, took a boat to Greenland that they had made, like a raft, or if they swam to Greenland. But eventually they had arrived in Greenland, which would be modern day. Let me find the nearest city. Yeah, this is why Greenland only has 58,000 people living in it. Which would be near modern day Tingmyrmit. Yeah, that seems right. Now, Eric the Red was the first person to settle there, followed by him and his Norse soldiers. But somehow, they had survived for over 400 years, as in the year 14,000, the Norse had completely vanished from Greenland. But after settling there, he figured out that he was one of the first settlers to ever become onto this whole island, which, if you're wondering, let me just give it a bit to load. Greenland is the biggest island in the world, followed followed by a bunch of smaller islands. There's not a lot of islands that even compare to Greenland. And Greenland is huge. Now, whenever the Norse settlers settled into Greenland, they decided to give it a name. Now, since it had only briefly been on Iceland, I I'm hoping that they didn't know that it was icy, that it wasn't that icy. Looking up from here, it's completely green, basically. Like probably as green as like Norway, Sweden, Denmark. But Greenland is completely icy. Like I mean the edges where like Nuke is, as you can see there, if you zoom in, it's not really wow, okay. There's a restaurant. That's cool. Poor Greenland. There's not really any ice on the edges, which is where Nuke is. That's why it's so populated. I mean, it's literally more populated than the literal capital of Vermont. Okay, here we go. If you see, Greenland is really big. Like, but if you drag it down to Africa, it's just about the size of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. But and it's just about, kind of like half of the United States, or like the central. It reaches down from Texas all the way up to Minnesota. Yeah, Minnesota. That's right. And you can get Greenland's normal size back. But if you take it all the way up here, Greenland isn't. Look, Greenland is the whole map. Like, take Greenland, bring it to Canada. It's about the same size as Ontario, or like, yeah, Ontario and Quebec combined, and probably like you add on Nova Scotia and maybe Newfoundland. Then you'll get the same size as Greenland. And then when you take Iceland, you can see how small Iceland really is. See, it's only about not even a quarter of Greenland. And when you put it to the United States, it's even smaller. It's literally just the size. Probably, if you go down, it's probably just the size of just Vermont and New Hampshire combined. So if you look there, Iceland's very sad. Greenland's much bigger. Iceland's just Vermont and New Hampshire, and yeah, they can have a vacation over there. Bye. So the Eric the Red decided that he would name this place Greenland, and it stayed as Greenland for until up until present, and no one really decided to rename it, which is just swap the names, like green, ice. Like, is Eric the Red colorblind? Because I can clearly see this is ice and this is green. So, yeah, that is why Iceland is Iceland and Greenland is Greenland. And do I think this should be Greenland and this should be Iceland? No. This should definitely be Greenland. And this should obviously be Iceland. But okay. I'm not Eric the Red. Is this how people from the Faroe Islands think? I don't want to be rude to anyone if you're watching this. If you're watching this from Greenland or Iceland, then comment and like I'll pin your comment. The first person to comment if they're from Greenland or Iceland, I'll pin their comment. Okay, so that's basically all I have to say. I'm gonna go play around with. I'm gonna go play around with Iceland. Bye.